Hi everyone, Sam Tsoumas here. I'm here today without my usual co-host and business partner Mike, but that's okay. I'm joined today by John Papagiannis, our COO. John, welcome.
Yes, thank you.
So for those of you who aren't aware, John joined us about 3 years ago.
A little over 3 years, yep.
But John comes from a completely different background, and mine and John's, we'll call it business relationships, started prior to Rosefellow's commencing. So, John, how about you give us a little 2-minute intro on what you did before and what you do here?
Sure. Yeah, so my practice was as a lawyer. I started as a lawyer, went to law school way back when I got out of college, and I started practicing law. I was a transactional lawyer for about 13 years. I was working at the same firm, a firm called, at the time when I joined it was called Fraser Milner Casgrain. Eventually that turned into Denton's, an international law firm. And I grew the ranks there from articling student to a young associate to eventually a partner and eventually equity partner. And I was there pretty much my whole practice. And that's where we kind of worked a little bit together back when you were at your previous employer. But yeah, that was essentially my background. I spent my entire career there building a practice in transactional law.
Started young. Equity partner at a major law firm. Started young.
Yeah. I started young. It was a tough road. It was a lot of hours, but I learned a lot. I had a lot of great mentors, and I really enjoyed the experience.
Tell me one of your mentors.
Yeah, you know what? I remember one mentor of mine in particular. One thing that he told me was, he said, "Papagiannis, you're not a one-trick pony." And you know what? It's something that I still value today. It's about getting a little bit outside of your comfort zone, and that's how I've gotten to Rosefellow too. And again, given what we just talked about, my experience is not the most straightforward one to get to a real estate development firm like ours. So with a legal background, doing what I'm doing today, I definitely had to step in outside of my comfort zone a little bit.
So before we get into that, I'll give everybody a little bit of a quick rundown of how we started working together. So in my previous career, basically I was able to engage with external attorneys. And at the time, the volume of what I did, and it was more simple of I didn't have a lot of tools disposal to me. I remember reaching out to you. Now, John is my cousin. And so there was a familiarity there. And the frank truth is, if you weren't good, regardless of you being my cousin, we wouldn't work in the past and you would not be working here. So what ended up happening is you and I basically worked on multiple leases together. And it got to the point where you almost understood how I was thinking, what I would accept, what I wouldn't, and I would leave you go. And when we started Rosefellow, there's all the corporate documents, the articles of incorporation, all our templates. Well, you at your former employer actually became our lead counsel. One, because, there's nobody I could trust more. We've already worked together. And two, because you knew exactly what we needed. Then when we started Rosefellow, you were our corporate attorney. Same principle applied. And from there, to me, you just became too important. It wasn't about, you staying there or coming here. I could tell you and I would spend, if you remember, especially at the onset, first couple of years, I remember being on the phone at 1 o'clock in the morning with you. We were doing everything. We were a team of 3, then 4. And you can imagine the amount of workload that we had. Without John, it wouldn't have been possible. So I'm assuming people probably thought you were impulsive. How were you living with the idea before you came to the conclusion to join? And what was the thought process there?
Yeah, that was a very difficult decision for me to make because in retrospect, maybe it shouldn't have been, but when I was in it, it was a difficult decision to make, keeping in mind that this was a career change for me, right? It's one thing, you see many lawyers leave their practice early on after 2, 3, 4, 5 years to do something else. But seeing somebody do that, leaving once they've established a practice as a partner in a large firm like that, it doesn't happen often. So that was, it was a difficult decision for me to make. And I think the way it happened, frankly, Sam, you and I had a number of discussions.
I had thrown the idea. I remember.
You had thrown the idea initially, and then at some point, we started chatting about it, and that took months and months and months of back and forth.
The lawyer in me took
that was
over.
the lawyer in me,
God.
100%. That was the lawyer in me. Before I really made the jump, I talked to, I had to talk to my family. I had to talk to my wife, kind of think about what I wanted to do. You know what? She took it very well. She supported the decision, and if she didn't, I wouldn't be doing it. True. Frankly, it needed full support on that side. And it's a risk, right? Keep in mind, Rosefellow was a huge success by then, but Rosefellow was still relatively new. Rosefellow was two and a half years in,
and it was chaos.
And it was absolute chaos. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a tremendous amount of fun, and the company's grown tremendously since then. So no, I'm very happy to have done it. But at the time, it was a tough decision.
Was there something at your practice that just felt stagnant for you, or was it actually going good and you just said?
Yeah. No, it was going well. Honestly, I did not see this. This is not something I was looking for. I saw the path of the law path, remaining in a law firm. I didn't know for sure that that's how it would happen, but I definitely saw that as a very viable path for me to stay where I was, or it could have been another firm as well, but in that world for the rest of my career.
So before we get into talking about today and the future, I'll ask one question about the past. So I can tell you flat out, when you joined, we had no idea what your role would be.
Yep.
It was more a function of, and we knew we didn't want you to be purely an attorney. It was more a function of you bring quality individuals who understand culture and have the work ethic into a company, and basically the role will find itself. I had no idea what you would do. I remember we would talk and you'd ask me, and I had no idea. Did you have an idea of what you wanted to achieve here?
No. No, you know what? Very, very much like you're saying, you're right. We had no idea what exactly my role would be. You nailed it. We knew that I was not supposed to be a lawyer. And that was a bit of a challenge for me too at the beginning, to not be the lawyer, to change my role. I was the lawyer since Rosefellow started. So stepping outside of that was a challenge. That was a bit of a learning curve. But yeah, eventually we kind of figured that out.
All right. So when you made the decision to change careers, what you thought you might be doing, which you weren't sure, to today, tell us a little bit about your role.
Right. So I kind of oversee everything that is investments, finance, legal, tax, and really work on executing every transaction we do, whether that's an acquisition, a disposition, a lease, or a financing.
So funny you say that. That used to be my role.
Yep.
And I could be frank and honest and say the first year and a half, it was difficult for me to adapt to your role because it was the right role for you. And we kind of did the same thing. But I can tell you where the transition has actually benefited the company is now, one, we work very well together. You work very well with every department. But I also see my role within the company is more as a, look at corporate vision, ensure that you and I are aligned. We usually are on documents. Also make sure, myself, yourself, and Mike are always aligned. I think the role, though, that you've brought has taken and alleviated a lot of the day-to-day work that is so important that allows us to grow differently.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I think that was the intent when I joined. I think it probably took us a bit of time to figure it out. It was very seamless, but for you to really get into the corporate vision and strategy and that piece,
it took me a while. And again, I like being honest when I say this. I had a hard time with it because I didn't know where I fit in. I had occupied everything. I remember you and I would do everything. And for years, it was just me. For 2-3 years, I did everything. And then I started giving up. And then I was like, oh, so John's in that meeting. Oh, so Mike and John are in that meeting. But that was actually the greatest thing. It wasn't a function of you taking up too much space. It's actually finding where myself and where I fit in. We always worked well.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, you do your job better than I did your job. Again, you understand what you do. I understand what you do. Nobody watching this podcast probably has a clear understanding. So what is a typical Monday to Friday for John. When you come in, what is it? What is your, I would say 8 hours, but we all know it's much more than that. What does a day in John's life look like at Rosefellow?
Yeah, I'd say much like every other Rosefellow employee here, every day is different. But if I could just summarize it, again, the big pieces are transaction based, right? So everything, again, whether that's working on a financing or an acquisition or a lease, those are the big pieces. So that's internal meetings, that is development meetings, that is external meetings with a lot of our consultants, our lawyers, our professionals, our lenders as well. That's a big piece of my role as well, is interacting with our lenders on a regular basis. So I'd say that's the gist of it, but it really varies from day to day.
So you're trained, you practice a career in a very structured organization. Here we work very, I won't say non-structured, but in a non-silo approach. Do you see any differences in the way you used to work versus the way we work now? And give us one tidbit that you saw that impressed you more than anything.
Yeah, it's 100% different. The non-siloed approach is a huge secret to Rosefellow's success, and I think it's it's very different from my prior life, and it's something that I needed to adapt to as well. When it really is the way for us to move quickly and adapt. We are a lean team. We'll always be a lean team, and that is that allows us to move quickly. And I mean, a good example is, and that happened not a couple of days ago, right? We had a potential issue on a potential lease discussion where, frankly, I think, Sam, you brought us into a meeting, brought 3-4 people into a meeting, and in a span of 5 seconds, everybody was speaking the same language, and that non-silo approach between our departments allowed us to resolve an issue that could have derailed a deal for nothing.
In my view, if we were not the way we operate, this would have killed it. Basically, everybody, the alarm bells are rung. Everybody goes in the world. Head of development speaks to their external attorney. The external attorney, reaches out to the tenant's external attorney, and it dies. We were actually able as a group to figure this out within 15 minutes, got on a call with the tenant and potential tenant, and it got solved. Tell me something, a negotiation principle that changed how you run now today.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is you have to be prepared, right? Preparation is key going into any negotiation. You got to know where you're starting, where your end point is, and how you're going to get there. And in order to do that, you got to prepare for that. That's number one. Number two, and I think you and I kind of share that approach very much when we get into a negotiation, is identify the key issues, and those big ones, get ahead of them. Get ahead of them quick, get ahead of them before, and hopefully if you have a call to resolve whether it's a lease, an acquisition, or whatever it is, you've probably resolved those three. Try to resolve those big ones before you get into that discussion.
100%. So one of the steps that you did recently in Rosefellow, which in my opinion, and frankly, I'm seeing the benefits in the industry, was change our lease structure. Talk to us about why you did this. What was your thought? And in your view, what did we give up by doing this? And what was the benefit? Yeah,
so again, being a lawyer, I can appreciate the importance of a long, exhaustive lease agreement or any other contractual
Ours have gone
agreement.
To what, 85 pages?
Yeah,
with the annexes,
schedules.
It's just something.
Yeah, and so a big piece of that is that leads to very protracted negotiations, which can, at times, lead to deal fatigue. It could lead to a deal dying. And our business is about getting deals done while protecting the important material points of the deal, and the important points for a landlord, of course. So I did an exercise with our external counsel to really come together and identify really what is necessary for the lease, protect ourselves, but don't get stuck in the weeds on things that are remote risks that nobody really is going to ever care about.
There's what is a common legal myth about real estate? And in my view, again, I'm not a lawyer, but you and I have spent years together. So thankfully to you, I've gone to actually be somewhat good at it. It's if a tenant doesn't want to, pay rent, or if a landlord doesn't want to actually fix the building or take care of it, you're going to court anyways. So what's in the lease is useless. And I mean this with all due respect. The courts will decide. So I have always been of the opinion that getting a deal signed, even an imperfect lease, is better than a perfect lease that may or may not be signed. What's your opinion on a lease vis-a-vis how do courts hold up? How do they hold up in court?
Yeah, I know. Look, I think there's content of the lease that matters, and there's some negotiation points that are very important in any kind of lease discussion. But at the end of the day, I also think, like anything else, the lease, you have to put that in the context of everything else we do. Everything we do, as again, I'm putting my hat of John, the CEO of Rosefellow, not a lawyer. Everything we do is about mitigating risk, right? That's in any aspect of our business, and the lease is the exact same thing. So there's certain things that where we're going to live with a little more risk and a little less risk on others, and so that you got to put that lease in the context of everything else we're doing in our business.
All right. So tell me one habit though that you took away from your law practice that made you successful here, and you are successful here.
I'd say that it is, again, being meticulous, given the volume that we have. Of course, that can sometimes be, to your point before about lawyers crossing every T and dotting every I. Maybe that can become an issue. But at the end of the day, I think that is being meticulous while understanding where to draw the line and just make a judgment call and take the risk.
All right. So give me an example, something that you brought value that made you say, okay, I did the right choice. It's part of your day to day where it's not just about being the CEO, somewhere where you felt, okay, this is good for me.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I bring to the table, again, we're all very different. I try to be the calm, collected, let's be objective person. I think I'm very much that, and that's something that I've always had in my practice. I learned to be that way, and so I think that's an added. It complements well, I'd say, to the rest of the leadership team.
So when Mike and I started this, Mike and I are very different. We have different approaches, but the synergies are great. I was at one extreme, and Mike was at the other extreme. Interestingly enough, you've taken the role of the other extreme, where now I fit in the middle of both. And I think that dynamic with the rest of our team works very, very well. Here, funny enough, let's talk a little bit about ethnicity. Yep. We're Greek in real estate development. So you're kind of, I can say you're probably a mentor to a lot of young Greeks getting into it. Tell me a little bit of what you're seeing in the Greek community and how they're reacting to you being part of Rosefellow.
Yeah, it's a good question. I do get a lot of outreach, I'm sure you do too, from a lot of young people, young professionals, young lawyers, young real estate finance professionals who just want to pick my brain, and I'm 100% open to that. I strongly encourage it. I'll never forget somebody, when I was applying for law school, I went to see a lawyer, a well-established lawyer in Montreal, who took his time out of his day to sit down with me and talk about the practice, talk about law school. And it really made an impression on me, and it really guided me. And so I like to pay it forward as well whenever I have an opportunity to give my thoughts or my 2 cents to somebody who wants to get into this business or the law business or any other business. I'm always happy to share thoughts.
All right, so now we're going to get into, I'll call it the last part of our podcast today. Let's talk about current events, landscape. Let's go with that. So first, all right, spec development in the greater Montreal area. What's your thoughts on it originally and today? Yeah,
so think about if you say originally, meaning when I joined Rosefellow
or prior.
That was
when you heard what we were starting. I remember we brought you in and we were building 4 buildings at the same time.
Yeah. Early on, I said, my thought was, this is crazy. But when I joined, or not even when I joined Rosefellow,
you still invoiced us.
Yes, I definitely invoiced it. No, when I joined Rosefellow, and even before that, frankly, I mean, that was at the height of the market as well. So it made a lot of sense. Today, it still makes a tremendous amount of sense, and I mean, it is our business model, and frankly, I think that that's only going to intensify, and we are in a unique position, being right now, I'd say probably the only ones who are putting this type of product up on spec in the market. So we definitely see it as an opportunity.
All right, so most people look at the industrial market, and for those who follow vacancy rates and availability, you come from, again, a background with people who are not in it day to day. So speaking to them and actually seeing what we do and what it is, give some guidance to the people out there about what the true industrial market is.
Yeah. So if you look at the industrial market at the end of the day, and you look at vacancy rates, everybody looks at those and they sit around the 6 and 7% rate in Montreal for industrial. But if you really dissect that further and you really look at our type of Class A plus product, 36 to 42 foot clear heights, large bay configurations, if you're really looking at the exact product that we're putting up, vacancy rate is much, much lower, under 1%. And if you look at some submarkets, probably less than that.
All right, let's talk about the buildings themselves. So again, you got into the construction industry, development industry. What are your thoughts about, zero carbon, LEED certified, green portfolio, ESG initiatives? Most people assume it's just, fluff. How do you see what we're doing here? And what do you think the impact is?
The ESG initiatives is something that we didn't invent. It's something that we have, but it has become an important part of our philosophy. At the end of the day, it is where we are going. There are advantages that we've seen for our tenants in terms of energy consumption, of course. Obviously, it's good. It's good for the environment, good for the planet. That also helps. But at the end of the day, it's also about sustainability of these buildings long term, which is a huge part of our business. We're building these buildings for the long term, not just for now. And at the end of the day, everybody's paying attention to that. Whether you're a buyer or a lender, people are considering that more and more.
So next 12 months, 2026, how do you see Montreal handling industrial? Give us a little bit of your prediction for the 2026.
I expect that there's going to be more market activity for sure. There has been. We've seen it. We saw it at the tail end of 2025, and we're feeling it at the beginning of 2026. And I think that's only going to intensify. But I think we're still the ones taking advantage of a unique opportunity here, putting up this type of product, which is going to put us in a great position, I'd say, for the next 2 years once our entire portfolio is up on the market.
So we often say on this podcast that our team here bleeds pink, but could you, now that you see we're a small team, and many people say, why not hire? Do you think we could do better if we hired more? Like if our team was significantly larger?
Yeah, I do not think that we would be as good at what we are as we are if we were a larger team. I think that defeats the non-silo approach, which we're very much proponents of, and it allows us, again, to move quickly. It allows us, leadership all the way down, to speak the exact same language and be working with the same information.
I agree. All right, next up, best negotiation advice.
Prepare. I'd say that's, again, 100%. You need to know where you are where you can end up, and know that in advance before you enter that meeting.
I like it. Tell me a belief about real estate that you've changed your mind on since joining Rosefellow as we'll call it as our former corporate attorney to now.
I mean, the one thing I will say is, again, I knew that when I joined, but it's certainly something that's evolved in my thinking, and it's part of why I'm part of Rosefellow, is that, again, industrial, we do not build a tin box. We are building state-of-the-art Class A product, where today I'd be happy to be working in that environment, that type of building, for sure.
I agree. All right, so tell me, you have many boring superpowers. Tell me one that benefits you the most.
I'd say it's staying calm, collected, and being objective. I think that's
compared to me, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I gotta say there are a lot of impulsive personalities in this office, and I won't point to any fingers. But so I think that that helps and adds value to the team.
All right, so let's look at another one. All right. Looking back, would you have done anything differently?
I wouldn't have. Again, the path that I took is not a straight one, but it allowed me to be in a unique position today where, again, I understand a lot of the legal components, but I think that's guided me to do better at my role today.
All right. And last question. We ask it of everybody, so I'll ask, if you had to go back and talk to an 18-year-old John, what advice would you give him?
I wouldn't give much advice because, again, I wouldn't change anything from my path. The one thing that I would say is just, I guess, enjoy every moment in the career path, because every one of it is different. Again, as a young lawyer, I do remember thinking and stressing about, okay, well, next stage, am I going to get promoted? Am I going to get on that deal? Am I going to become a partner? And so there's often that. But so that's the one thing that I would say. Don't stress too much about that. But otherwise, no, I'm very happy with the path.
Well, I could honestly say without any doubt in my mind, I'm happy you joined. You've made this company significantly better, and you're a leader in our industry. All right, John, thank you very much. Everyone, that's a wrap for today. If you like what you saw and would like to continue seeing more, please follow us on all our social media outlets.